Greetings, programs. Joe Buddy Ingrid Bernal here. That's me, Hankering Fernale, back with another awesome episode of old Drunkens and Dragons, Runehammer. That's this whole thing right here, this mind space that you're perceiving through this rectangle of perception. Perceiving perception is perceptive. On this episode, we're not going to do a rune design. We're going to do some world building, because when you're world building, you're cool. And we're going to do it Mario style. So if you ever, threw down on good old Mario 2 or any of the older Mario games, you know exactly what I'm going to be talking about. And we're going to hit it hard. We're going to hit fast. So let's kick that little intro and get into this. This is world building Mario style. Good to have you here. I am neck deep in this stuff. So this is just a direct report on what I've been doing and why. We got two things to talk about today, talking about world building and a technique that maybe will help you out to bring some more richness, some more consequence, some more player agency to your game, while simultaneously making it easier to manage the ridiculous concept that a game master can perceive of an entire world as a simulation and have realistic outcomes. I don't believe that that's possible. And even if it is, I don't got the time for that stuff. I got like bicycles to ride and stuff like that. When it comes to world building Mario style, we're going to get two dividends out of this. One, you're going to have a simpler perception of your world. And two, you're going to have clear choice points and consequences for those choice points with your players. Let's cut to the first one. Now, the good old-fashioned Mario map, at least the one that I really like and think of, is this little guy right here. Everybody knows this thing. And there were lots of other games back in the day that would employ a map of this style, but this is just the one that I love. There's a lot of great features to this that you can learn from as a game master. Thinking in terms of landmarks. Landmarks are so handy because they don't necessarily involve a bunch of conceptual hooey. It's just a hint. So if you have a landmark that's like a gigantic sword stuck in a mountain or something, you're done. You just doodle your little sword stuck in your little mountain and you're done. And it's kind of over there. You might have another one that's like a little town on the back of a giant turtle. Like, you gotta love that super cool Golden Axe world map where it would scroll sideways. Similar mindset, using this sort of dotted line and using landmarks. So a landmark is just a quick doodle, and exactly what they mean and what the details are and what's happening there, that can wait. Don't worry about it. You're just using the concept of a landmark and the doodle to capture like your desire, your sketch, what you want to be in your world, not necessarily what you want to happen. And that's where you get this big load relief on your prep. So your world is sort of created in this nice loose sense of visual landmarks, rather than this huge complex spreadsheet of facts and behaviors and possible incomes and outputs and just whoa, right? So you're still going to need a sense of like who are some NPCs and where they at and what could be cool, stuff like that. But these landmarks and this dotted line give you a sense of distance and give you a sense of layout in your world. Now your players are on your little Mario map and they're moving from node to node. A node could be a session, a node could be a location, and then you've got a branch point. Now, to just have two branches at a point in a map might feel a little railroady to you. It might not feel like that true sandboxing D&D we all dream of, but that's okay, because you can also do a question mark dot on your map. So you have little dots on your map that are in sequence. That means for this part, we're going my way. We're like in it. We're in the water slide of action, as I like to call it. At this point, we've got a T intersection. You can either go over here and join the crew of the Orpheus in their search for the mystery of why the world is ending, or you can go over here and answer the threat of the meat box. This is just a binary choice. It's a branch. Finally, you can have a dot that's just a question mark, and these question mark dots are probably what your players are dreaming about. This is where they know the variables of the world. They're familiar with their characters, and they're familiar with the stakes of their actions, and then you don't know what's next. Honestly ask them, what are you guys going to do, or what are you thinking you're going to do? And when you put a question mark dot on your Mario map, be prepared to know that you don't know what the next session is going to look like, or even the next series of sessions. You're honestly asking players. You're not straw manning them like, hey, what do you guys want to do? And you already know what's coming next. That would mean you have a series of dots. And so this dot approach, like you're seeing in these images here, is a map for when you're going to be totally okay with player action. And honestly, you will have a hard time mapping beyond a question mark dot, even though you might have more landmarks in your world design, as kind of what you're seeing right here in this little set of doodles. So you've got a branch and then you've got a question mark. Okay, now the second one, the second sort of big dividend that you gain from this Mario approach that I wanted to talk about, besides getting a simpler grasp of your world construction, is agency and consequence in player choices. Now this especially applies to the branch, the binary choice. Okay, so you're coming along your dotted line, session 1, session 2, session 3 then is a choice. You can join the crew of the Orpheus or you can answer the threat of the meat box. This is great for the players because it's a finite, comprehensible choice that they can really dig their teeth into. Do I want fries or a burger? Instead of, what will I do? Those are such different mindsets. And at least at the tables that I've had over the years, I've found that players really, really like a clear choice where they go, well, I'll tell you, if we go mess around with the crew, we're going to have a bunch of oceanic adventures. We're probably going to get into like some Atlantean stuff, and that stuff's always cool. We're probably going to like find out some of the bigger secrets of the world. But then they're like, yeah, but this meat box thing is going to destroy our hometown. So maybe we should just deal with that first since that's a more immediate threat. But then we kind of lose our chance to be on this big epic voyage. Oh man, there's a lot to talk about in such a clear choice. It doesn't make it a railroad just because it's binary. That's the player part that's fun. As a game master, whichever road is not taken, you can take that next little dot and now it's an invert of itself or can have a skull on it basically. What does that mean? It means by not taking that choice, that little dot on your map now needs to suffer consequences. In the case of my current group, they chose to join the crew of the Orpheus. And after our third session in our sort of, after talk while we're finishing off our mugs, it kind of comes up that they sort of abandoned their hometown and it's probably destroyed by now. If this meat box rumor is true, they don't have access to that information currently. But you see how simple that little switch is? We're hitting switches, yo. So on dots that don't get visited when it comes to a choice on a map, those dots, you can mark them with any kind of little symbol. I like skulls. Skulls are cool. Flip the switch on this little dot. It is no longer what I thought it was going to be. It is now the opposite of that. It is the worst version or the best version. Whatever. Usually it's the worst version. Where heroes don't go, bad things happen. Now, here's where I think you can really lean into world building Mario style is for you, what does a dot mean? A dot could even mean an encounter if you want to get more detailed with it. It could even mean a portion of a session. It could even mean a room. You can bring this Mario mindset all the way down to a dungeon design. Maybe you have like 5 dots in your dungeon and there's a branch at one point, and if one isn't taken, that flips to its consequence mode. And you're applying all these same simplifying principles to your dungeon design rather than this endless labyrinth of squiggles where you're not quite sure
what the ramifications are on the elder brain if they go south in the Grand Corridor and never encounter the Mind Flayer younglings and instead go to the acid pool where you didn't think they would go because you thought they were going to go around the other way, and now the beholder doesn't have really a reason to be mad at them, and so that's going to set you up to make the beholder go back into stasis, and they're living in this sort of ice crystal thing, and then they don't have the ice key, which they were supposed to get up near the elder brain.
You see how that kind of thinking, though interesting, is a bit of a plate of spaghetti compared to a nice, tidy little Mario map. So if you guys take a look at what I'm showing right here, this is my little doodle, and this is an actual documented sort of status sheet on where my current campaign is. And these guys did not take this one choice, so it gets a skull. Now, a skull doesn't mean that this is never revisitable. And this is the last piece that I want to mention with you guys about doing a Mario-style world build. And that is the old adage, may no content be left behind. May no content be left behind means that if you come up with a cool idea for an encounter or a situation or a threat, and it doesn't get visited, and so that dot on your map flips to skull, it does not, by any stretch of the imagination, mean that now that idea is gone, is lost, and was not visited by the players, and therefore, oh darn, all that cool work I did as a game master, wasted. You can rejigger things in a way that makes it work for you. Now that little dot still flipped to a skull. That cannot be changed. That is the truth of the world. It creates a believable world with consequences, right? And that's exciting for players. But what was going to happen in that dot before it flipped to its consequence form can now be relocated somewhere else. So in my case, this meat box thing, which is basically a Droem war wagon that is clad in the corpses of its victims, like skeletons and chunks of flesh and limbs and stuff. And there's these nasty goblins in there who have chained up a few Dolgrims and Dolgaunts who are pulling this wagon through. And they're just on like a Droem war party. They're on the warpath for Droem. Droem is not done as a monster nation. They're trying to expand in this time of calamity, and they've sent out a series of these war wagons called meat boxes, and these things are coming. My idea to encounter this enemy can be moved elsewhere in the world in whatever way may fit. But the particular time when a particular meat box encountered a particular town, that's a dot that's flipped to its consequent mode. I still want my players to fight one of these things, so I can take that encounter idea and move it to another dot on my Mario map. And even more loosely, I could take a little meat box, little doodle of a landmark and put it on my map before there are even any dots connecting it, as you're seeing right here. Right here, where I never have a sense for where the infographics appear. And that's why I'll never have a career in live news broadcasting. All right, you guys, that's really the core of what I wanted to talk about with world building Mario style. I've been trying to keep my theses and my videos far shorter so that you have more time to work on your own ideas rather than these sort of hour and 2 hour long tirades that, I was kind of going on, last year. Diving inward and inward and inward into, all these different creative methods and what I've done and all these different things. I've been trying to really condense it down to a thesis. And when it comes to world building the Mario way, I really do think you get exciting, clear choice with your players when you present these binary choices. I think you get a great tool to gauge, mark, and track consequences of choices that aren't taken. And finally, I think that the power of thinking in landmarks and never leaving content behind and moving it on your Mario map. This type of mapping makes that super simple. Rather than, just for a quick sort of feeling of contrast here, a world building technique which basically leans back and says, I'm going to simulate a continent. Okay. This way, no matter where they go or what they do, I'll at least have some level of understanding of the environment, the people, and the variables involved. To me, that is pretty damn cool. If you're doing it that way, you're cool. That's epic world building. I just don't really have the brain power to manage such a titanic task when most of my effort is really focused on the atomic details of any one session. I'm really a session-driven GM, and giant sandboxes to me are 90% lost content. You've heard of the lost continent. Well, this is lost content, and it's even darker than the Congo. Before I completely lose my mind, I'm going to get out of here. That's my little video on world building Mario style. I hope it helps you get a sense of how to build your world as you play your world and prepare less material ahead of yourself so that that material is prepped with great atomic detail and you can develop strange bickering behaviors for your NPCs. So when that moment comes that you need to argue with yourself, you'll know what to do. And that's a benefit to your garden. All right, this is Hanker Infernal. I'm signing off. I know the world's in a little bit of a crazy spot right now, you guys. Times are a little bit tough, but just remember, you just got to stay smiling. You just got to be bright and just love one another, okay? We're going to get through all this stuff together, so keep it real. And you're always going to get a deal. Strength, honor, and beer. Pour one out for your homies, and I'll see you guys on the internet. All right, thanks for tuning in, and thanks to all my new patrons. I don't know why, but a bunch of new patrons just arrived in the past week, so that's super cool. The shield wall grows for my wacky podcast, which talks about the same stuff as my YouTube channel, just without video. That's the real innovation of podcasts. All right, you guys, I'm going to get out of here. See you around. Remember, have fun. Don't roll a one.
Every stinking time these adventurers show up, you pull the lever, you start negotiating with them, rolling them charisma rolls and whatnot and so forth, and then we wind up getting deaded. You was gonna get grimly deaded.
I ain't done no such thing. Every time these adventurers come through, I just simply behave in a rational and defensible manner, a fashion. I didn't pull no lever, my lever's rusted in place.
You couldn't pull that lever if you tried. You was wicked than my grandma, old moke. You can't do nothing. You was terrible with this job and whatnot, so forth.
Why are you always running me down with this? Always giving me a hard time about how good of a guard I am. I'm sleeping on my guard duty, don't know how to pull a lever. I wish you'd just leave me alone for once.
Well, I'm of slightly critical nature, and so when the adventurers show up and they want to convince us to let them in, I think I would like to be critical at that time of your general guard technique.
Good God, is this going to end?